So I think that I realized that when I was a kid, I was scared of everything all of the time. I don't think that I, as a child, necessarily would have described it as being sad, because I probably just didn't have the maybe emotional intelligence to really understand what I was feeling. And I think through high school, it was really frowned upon to express too much negative emotion in my house when I was a child, because there was actually so much negative emotion all the time, that to exhibit signs of depression or to exhibit signs of distress, I remember I could actually get in trouble for being too mopey around the house. I think my parents, who were profoundly depressed people, I think couldn't deal with the fact that their children were depressed also and were really struggling against it. I think I probably realized that it was deeply and unfortunately probably pretty permanently stuck into my psyche, probably my early 20s, I guess, or I really understood what that feeling was and how to put it into words. But as I said, I think I remember as a child feeling the same way, but just not understanding that it was the same type of feeling. There have certainly, throughout my life, and in almost everybody's life, there's certainly sad records that I have listened to that have, at times when I was feeling bad, made me feel not so alone. Part of the motivation for doing this band is to attempt to, in some small way, emulate the musical approach that other people have done, that I have gotten out of and other band members have gotten something out of. I don't have no idea how people, how I have no idea how a particular individual will not react to something. But when we started the band, we were certainly, as I stated, emulating approaches that other people that we admired had taken. I hope that somebody gets something from it. That's the whole point of doing it. That song is my dad committed suicide in the end of 2002, and his name is Michael, and that song is about him. It essentially describes some of the actual events that occurred in his suicide, and talks a little bit about my inability to understand him as a person, but at the same time, trying to, in some small way, hope that on his journey outside of his earthly existence, that he's in a better place. It's been a little more than 10 years since he died, and it has been a curious emotional spectrum for me. It has been a curiously growing emotional spectrum for me. My feelings about his death and the manner of his death and him as a person evolve all of the time. Even though it's been a long time since he died. I suppose it makes sense that his place in my heart would not disappear or anything like that. But it surprises me how radically it continues to evolve and change. I mean, there's no easy or succinct way to really feel about suicide. I mean, certainly some people's lives are unbearable, and there's no way for them to continue existing through them, nor should they. I mean, some lives are so unbelievably horrible that it makes sense for them to not go on anymore. But on the other hand, the amount of pain that causes people that live sometimes can be equally as unbearable. I mean, there's no way to really come up with some sort of formula as to which is more unbearable, the person continuing to live their life or the people who lose the person who has died. Two people that I know of several people that have killed themselves, but two people who I was incredibly close to have. As I stated a little bit before, I still feel incredibly mixed about it. Certainly I wouldn't recommend it as a solution, but I don't inherently think that it's something that somebody should never do or never consider. Not to be melodramatic about it, but I would it will probably be how I meet my own fate. I promised my mother that I would not kill myself while she was still alive. So, at least while my mother is alive, I will continue to press on. Drake is one of my favorite singers and favorite guitar players and favorite songwriters. I don't feel connected to him because of his suicide, and I don't feel like his suicide has anything to do with his music at all. He made completely wonderful and innovative and beautiful records. His external life was, if it was his external life or was his internal life, or he decided it was not worth continuing. But it doesn't have anything to do with his music at all. As a listener, when I listen to his records, I don't put his death into context. Same thing with Ian Curtis. When I think about Ian Curtis as a human being, in the chronology of his life, obviously, his untimely end will make an appearance. But when I listen to those records, I'm not even really thinking about the band members particularly. I'm sure that they would, the members of Joy Division would not want you to be thinking about them. I'm sure that they would want you to be getting something from the music that they tried to make. And those records are, the Nick Drake records and the Joy Division records are so untouchably wonderful that, fortunately that is what happens. They completely transcends the suicide of the singers. I don't know Tim Buckley's music that well, and I don't know. It's not the coolest answer, but because it's everybody's favorite Nick Drake song, but Pink Moon is probably my favorite Nick Drake song. I wish I had a more obscure taste, but that song is pretty untouchably wonderful, despite the fact that it's been used in a commercial. I'm actually a really big Cat Power song, but that's I like that song a lot, but it's not my super favorite song. I'm not sure that I have much to comment on that song. It for whatever reason, I didn't connect that so much with that one. Even it's a great song, but I think the song Names is probably my favorite Cat Power song. It is so unbelievably bleak, but without being grandiose about its bleakness. It is just describing the situations that particular people that I don't know if it's a true song or not, but it seems as if it is. It seems to me like it's describing the absolute bleakness of people that she had known throughout her childhood as she has gotten older. From being a child to a junior high kid to a high school student. just so stirring as to how relentlessly and immediately miserable life can become for somebody at such a just hopelessly young age. I was really moved with how simply and how directly she was able to capture that notion, that experience. Anything at all when I'm super depressed or if I'm feeling bad, I am able to write about that experience afterwards when I feel more leveled out and more normal. I think like wait for this plane to go over. Music and writing hasn't really ever been something that immediately pulled me out of any kind of psychic trouble. It was and continues to be more of a way to I think organize being overwhelmed by what I know will be upcoming horrible emotional experiences and horrible sort of psychological disruptions. When I'm in the midst of some sort of psychological disruption, I can't really play in any kind of productive way. I mean, I've tried to do it, but I'm just too distracted by being freaked out. But it certainly makes it completely possible to continue to go on living insofar as there's somewhere to put the knowledge of those feelings and those experiences other than just crushing down upon my throat or whatever. I'm not sure. I think it might be other things. I think it's mostly just what I said before. I mean, it's a place to put those feelings. I definitely don't feel better, but I feel less overwhelmed. So I suppose in a way that's feeling better. I mean, it's not like it makes those bad feelings go away. But it makes it more possible to deal with them in a constructive way. I can, by externalizing them in a way, or turning them into a song, or turning them into poems or whatever. I don't know. It's someplace to put it. So I suppose in a roundabout way, it must make me feel better than I felt before, because it keeps me from losing my mind. I feel extraordinarily grateful and extraordinarily moved by anybody who's taken the time to express that they appreciated Xiu Xiu. I feel very, very honored and glad to have the opportunity to have been a part of making something that somebody had that response to. The reasons that I have a hard time about myself largely don't have anything to, it's not like I hate myself because I play in Xiu Xiu, but if somebody likes Xiu Xiu, therefore I should hate myself. Like it's other parts of my life and other parts of my internal existence that I'm very tired of. But I'm trying to change those things. I don't want to feel shitty, so I'm trying to to do things and think through them, so I feel less rotten. I probably feel less rotten now than I've felt in a long time. Or I feel I have a clearer handle on how to basically stop thinking about something. I would become profoundly negatively obsessed with things and just think the same negative thought over and over and over and over and over again, which makes things pretty unbearably miserable. And there's certain times of the day when that will happen, and I'm slowly figuring out some kind of just almost practical and boring things to do to not feel that way anymore. I'm getting really exhausted and tired of it. I think I was always exhausted and tired of it, but I just didn't really know what to do about it. It's they're not really connected so much. But again, I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate people taking the time to check it out. When my mother's life has been incredibly difficult. She suffered unbelievable abuses growing up, and has had a lot of psychological and physical difficulties to contend with. My childhood with her was very difficult, and largely very unhappy. She tried her best, but at times did not treat me very well. She always made it very clear to me that she loved me, and then would say and do some pretty reprehensible things. So initially, my relationship with my mother was very confusing. Now she's great. In the last probably 4 or 5 years, she seems to have really turned herself around. Is much more stable, very sweet, very, very open to discussing any of the crappy things that happened when I was a kid. And I really admire her ability to have not given up on life, but which she could have easily done, but to realize that the path that she was on was hurting her and hurting people in her family, and really changing herself in a profound way. Very, as I said, very, very proud of her for that. We're very close now. It was very, 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 very unhealthy. At the moment that I wrote that, it's not so much that I couldn't think of anything happy about him. It's just there aren't very many things. He had not unlike my mother, had an incredibly difficult life as well. Suffered profound abuses as a child, and had even more psychological and health problems than my mom. At the time I wrote that, it was fairly fresh after his death, and now, some time has passed. I probably could think of some happier things. I may need to more now also. He was a very good man, incredibly troubled person. And he tried his best. I miss him very, very much. The tour routine is so incredibly boring, it's not even worth mentioning. But kind of as you alluded to, how the day unfolds has a whole lot to do with, the type of mood that I'm in, and how much I get done has a lot to do with, what kind of mood I'm in. One thing that I have come up with is, because I am super busy and have a lot of things to do, if I'm feeling really moody, which is unfortunately more frequently than not, then it gets a little bit difficult to stay organized. So this is very silly sounding, but I have just a long list that I keep on the kitchen table of things that I have to do in a particular day. You know, I wake up, do some vocal exercises, eat breakfast, go to the gym, come back from the gym, and then start going down the list of things that I gotta do. Usually the last thing in the day that I'll do is work on writing music for Xiu Xiu records. If there's some like other tangential or auxiliary side projects I'm working on, or if I have to practice for a tour, I'll usually do all those things first. And then usually after about 7 o'clock I'll start writing and recording Xiu Xiu stuff, and that usually lasts till maybe midnight or something. And then if it's before a tour, then I will not drink, and if I'm not going to be on tour for a while, then I'll usually get pretty fucking drunk after working on music, which I enjoy drinking tremendously. Although I feel fortunate, and I don't feel like I'm an alcoholic if I have to stop drinking because I got to go on tour. It's real easy for me to stop. I just like it. I love how it tastes, and I love how it makes me feel. I feel a lot happier when I'm drunk, and almost everybody I know has said that I'm a lot more fun to be around and a lot more pleasant to be around when I've had a few drinks, which I guess is probably true with most people, I guess. I don't know Cassavetes well enough to. I've just seen only a couple of things. I've seen To Kill a Chinese Bookie and to One Under the Influence, so I don't know his movies that well. I like those two movies. I'd like to see some more though, to really be able to have anything to say about them other than that I thought they were pretty cool. LA is fascinating for me. I just moved back. I lived there until I was 21, and I just moved back there a couple months ago. So it's been a long time since I've been there, and it has largely changed for the better. It's a lot less dangerous than it used to be. It seems a lot less tense. Right about the time I moved away was just after the LA riots, when half the city burned down. So it's about as tense as it could possibly be. I don't. It might be. It's probably because I'm older and I have traveled a bit more. It probably seems less tense to me, a little bit less overwhelming. And I grew up in the suburbs, so anytime I went into the real city, it probably seemed a lot more crazy and frightening to me than it actually was. But also I remember things being a lot more tense and gross in the suburbs than they seem to be now. But LA is a fascinating and wonderful place. I absolutely love that it is so endless and decentralized. New York is totally great, but there's a part of New York that is New York, and then that's it. There's no single part of town that really defines Los Angeles at all, and the parts of towns or the neighborhoods shift around all the time, and something that was there 5 years ago is then not there anymore. It's like 20 miles away, and then something new crops up there. It's a completely impermanent and totally temporal place, which leads it to be completely impossible to understand, and then seemingly totally mysterious all of the time, which I really love about it. I also really like the beach too, so it's close by that. And the art scene there is really violent and really weird and super intense. The people's work ethic there, I think, is really cool. Generally, people in the art and music scene there are working really hard and pushing themselves to do something interesting. I mean, there's the whole major label record industry there, which is just kind of irrelevant and boring and very fake. But I mean like the for real art people. There's one of the best dance clubs I've ever been to in my entire life, called Rhonda. It's some of the most fun I've ever had on the dance floor just before I went on this tour. People there are pretty fucking cute also, which I like. The food is great. The weather is super great. In downtown and in Koreatown and in MacArthur Park, all the buildings are really beautiful and really decrepit at the same time. It's a very exciting and an interesting place. It does not feel boring to me in any way whatsoever, which I really I like that it is moving forward very, 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 almost absurdly quickly. But it's really sunny at the same time. It's a really peculiar and impossible dichotomy. Song? Well, I guess it depends on what I need to get done. Lately, I'm really terrible at remembering song titles. I gotta look. There's one song by Kraftwerk that is probably my favorite song at the moment. I don't really listen to it to get pumped up, but I listen to it to. If I need to hear one song, The Hall of Mirrors on Trans-Europe Express. It's not as much a pump-up song, but like an inspiring song. If I need to get if I'm stuck on what to do with writing, or I just need to reset my aesthetic part of my brain, I'll listen to that song. If I'm working out and I need a little kick in the ass, I'll listen to the recent Diane Work record. It's pretty. It's a very, very cool way to put that. I like the use of that word. Well, it would depend on what point of being a kid. When I was in junior high, the Purple Rain record by Prince, I really leaned on and listened to constantly. It still holds up as one of the best records of all time, as you already know. And I guess when I was a teenager, probably "Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me" by The Cure, when I think I was like 15 or 16. And then I stopped being a kid after that. So it's not the same every time. Very rarely, if I'm feeling super upset, am I able to write. I kind of talked about this before a little bit. Am I able to write any music at all? Occasionally, if I'm feeling incredibly sad, I can make a really, really rough draft of a set of lyrics where I will just, scrawl out what those feelings are. But it's not. It's not really palliative so much. It's just to remind myself that this is something that I want to write about at some point, and it's more like a. I suppose just trying to take advantage of. That's the wrong word. I guess just trying to take advantage of that moment of sort of absurd pathos, and very, very quickly, while it's still possible to do it, write about what's going on, like for 3 minutes or something, and then go on freaking out. Just that it's pretty rare that happens. Most of the time, it's well afterwards with some examination, writing about something. I guess I did it kind of recently. My nephew, who I am very, very, very close to and love very much, and my brother and his wife, they couldn't stay in Los Angeles and had to move after a couple months. And I can't remember feeling sadder about anything since my dad had died. In a way that I don't understand and can't really describe, I feel really bonded with my nephew and really love being around him and love him very much as a person. It doesn't really make sense that I would be so upset about it. It's a normal thing. People move all of the time. And I feel much more upset about it than I understand. I feel more upset about it than I understand why. So just in a moment of really freaking out about that, I wrote like half a paragraph about some things that had happened and some things that he said to me. But that's probably the last time it's happened in kind of a while, though. I probably just don't feel like thinking about the ugliest day that I experienced as a kid. It's a long list of kind of ugly days. So I decline to state. There are definitely people who are writing about emotions in a really bald and open way. But you are right. I mean, what seems like is very popular and right now is pretty hollow sentiments. I don't know why that is happening. Yeah, but music really sucks right now. There are almost no new good bands at all, and the bands that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not because I'm older, because I've asked friends of mine who are like 22, you know, like, am I just fucking old and don't get it, or does music suck right now? You know, these are people who I know have, you know, open and emotional taste in music, and they're just like, oh god, it just sucks. It's like the worst thing in forever. I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, you know, that happens in history. There's, you know, low points in art, and yeah, really got a lot of really pointless bands right now. It's such a drag. I really want to listen to new bands. I want to hear things I have not heard before that don't make me want to fucking throw up. It's been a little while. I don't know why people seem to be, as of late, really shying away from showing their emotions really openly. Yeah, I wish that I had any idea as to what, but I mean, I absolutely understand what you're saying, and if you know, have I mean, in addition to noticing it, I've, you know, had a number of friends point it out as well. Just like, why is this going on? Why is everything so vapid and hollow and really about nothing right now? Yeah, I have no idea. Maybe because people know that there's going to be an, you know, environmental Armageddon in like 40 years, and they're just figuring they'll just, you know, party like it's 1999 or something. I haven't really read any of his stuff in probably 8 or 9 years. I about 2 months ago watched a documentary about him, and it made me want to start reading him again, you know, after time has passed, and sort of see how I feel about him now. And also being back in Los Angeles too, that, you know, re-sparks the interest. Because of that, I started reading John Fante again.
The beautiful things about Los Angeles was, and to me is like, you know, one of the best things ever, a store called 99 cents. To me, yeah, to me it's like, you know, the best things ever. And
oh fuck, that's really funny.
You go to shop there?
Everybody shops at the 99-cent store, yeah.
Yeah,
but it's a very particular LA thing. That's
yeah,
really
but even for the people, because the people are so much fucking interesting.
Yeah. It's quite a scene. The one in my neighborhood is, God, it is a profoundly interesting event to go there. The homeless situation in Los Angeles is kind of pretty overwhelming. There's I think that because the weather there is good, a lot of people from other parts of the country move to LA. I think people who are already homeless go to LA because you can live outside because the weather is good. So the homeless situation in LA is pretty overwhelming. But yeah, if you need someone to talk to, you can always go talk to a homeless person. There's very definitely something different about in an incredibly general way about the American affect and about a European affect. That, I mean, what you're saying makes sense. I mean, I think in a very broad stroke that the idea of America is, you know, progress, and I mean, it even mentions the word happiness in the Constitution. And Europe has been around long enough and has been through enough suffering and horror to realize that that the likelihood of happiness is infinitely smaller than the likelihood of genocide and plague and massive crazy war and famine. Europe has been through a lot more shit than America has been through. Found myself having to consciously decide not to focus on something bad, and will consciously decide to try and think about something nice. So those kind of pleasant days have been a little bit, in a practical way, have been more at the front of my mind as a coping tool. I'll think about, as I said, things with my family are a lot better now. I'll think about my nephews and my niece. I've had the opportunity to travel a lot. I think about, I took a couple years ago, I took a bird watching trip to the jungle in Guyana. I'll think about that. Or I took a great trip to Vietnam. I'll think about that. I have a very, very, very close best friend. I'll think about her. Or just something really almost typical and ridiculous. I'll just think about the beach. It is. You want me to talk about my childhood?